because let's talk about Joseph.
Okay.
Because when did that then start becoming in your mind? Because Joseph is one of my favorite stories in the Old Testament.
Yeah, mine too.
And it is, and here's an example of something that makes a whole lot of sense. That we, obviously there's Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat that Donny Osmond did way back in the day, but that's not what you do. This is a different thing. And so what are the beginnings of the story for you?
Well, the guys at Frontiers Records that put out the Jesus album, they contacted me. They kept emailing me every 6 months saying, hey, when can we get another biblical rock opera with multiple singers? And I was busy and I was like, oh, I don't know. But then I had a lull and I began to pray about it and talk to my wife about it. Actually, we were talking about it. It's like, well, I could, I have this season. I could work on something like that. What do you think would be good? And we were talking about David, and we talked about Bonhoeffer. I mean, I didn't think it doesn't necessarily have to be from the Bible. I think they just wanted it to be spiritual and religious. And anyway, I landed on Joseph, and it was like, well, let's try it again, testing the waters. And I got a couple songs right out of the gate. I think. A couple songs from the first album, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It wasn't enough evidence for me, and so I just kept thinking about it. And, one of the things that, of course, attracted me to Joseph, as among lots of things, is the dreams and the prophecy and the idea that the misunderstanding that the brothers had of the prophecy that Joseph gives them, when he sees himself ruling over them and all of that. It's through their misunderstanding, being angry about it, they throw him in the pit, and it's critical to the fulfilling of the prophecy.
Yeah.
That they didn't understand it. It's amazing how God works.
It is. And then even if you think of Joseph's side of that, if he had known what he was going to have to go through to get to the fulfillment of that prophecy and the dream, would he have changed the way he does things?
Right.
Yeah, because it's not an easy road for him.
Well, there were so many things that attracted me to that story. I could talk about that for a long time as well. The main thing I think is that I like the idea that Joseph is going around doing good wherever he goes. He's so good that they put him in charge wherever he goes. So he's not somebody who's brooding about how unjust God and life has been to him. Here's a guy who's been falsely accused. He's a slave, and then he's in prison. He's so good in prison that they turn the prison over to him. Right?
I told you he's one of my favorites, because in the beginning when we first meet him and he's a young boy, and the Old Testament even tells us that his father Jacob's one of his favorites, if not his favorite son.
Right.
And
because he's the daughter of Rachel,
the son of Rachel. Yes.
Yeah, son.
And so he gets that. Yeah. He gets the coat of many colors, and he's kind of parading that around. So he's walking around in this prideful thing, and then when all the bad things start happening, and he becomes the example of how we're supposed to be in difficult situations.
Yeah.
Of making the best out of horrible situations, and then God just works in every single one of them. It's such a cool story.
I didn't have a way to really wrap it up that was entirely satisfying. I was struggling with the very end. In fact, I spent days on a bunch of different endings. This is really interesting to me. And I had forgotten that I had sent the whole second album to, you might know him, Rick Altizer. Do you know Rick?
No, I don't.
He was an artist. Now he's making films. He's an amazing guy, amazing, wonderful friend. And he's the kind of guy you can send a whole album to. So what do you hear? Just do whatever you hear, And he sings all these really cool background parts. And anyway, he sang this. I had cut the long vamp with the guitar solo. I was going, oh God, that's so tired. I've done that so many times. Let's do something different, I had cut it, but I had forgotten I'd sent him the version before I'd cut it. And then he sang this thing over the very end that just sums up sums it all up.
Wow.
He says, God uses everything. And when I hear it, I cry because it's like, wow, everything for good. He sings over the whole vamp with all these beautiful harmonies. And so really that's kind of the summation of the Joseph story, that, if we'll give our troubles, if we'll give, really Joseph's problem is that his family's broken. He's got this family that's, really messed up.
Yeah.
And God brings it together. And I didn't really realize, it's the wonderful thing about writing these concept albums sometimes is that I will learn a lot myself. Like I never really realized that it was the, what's the right way to put it? The redemption of Judah. It was really the turning of Judah when he says, I'll trade my life for Benjamin. When he said, I feel like that is what changes Joseph's heart, because he doesn't want to tell it. He's still struggling. He's still struggling with the past. And he's still struggling to forgive. But when that happens, that's when he reveals himself.
When the brothers say, yeah, okay.
Yeah. When Joseph finally says, okay, hey, I'm Joseph. Yeah. Until then, he's still kind of messing with them, right? He's doing all these things. But when Judah turns, wow. I don't know. There's so much. There's so much in there. You could write so many more.
Well, that's my next
albums.
question, because I was going.
There's so much in there.
You have part 2 coming out, and just so I'm gonna just look this up here real quick, because the first part 1 of this is not a short album. There is a lot of music and a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's
in this project.
A little over an hour.
It's a little over an hour. Yeah, hour and 6 minutes. Okay, of music that you came out with this past summer.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's part 1, and part 2 is coming out here in just a few weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So was it always a part 1 and part 2, or did you get into this and go, oh, this story is just so big, I got so much ideas and music coming out of this?
Yeah, it was both, really. I was trying to write one piece, and I was just kind of going. Sometimes I'm just throwing things against the wall, and I'm just going and going. And then I kind of came back from the canvas and went, whoa, this is a lot of stuff. I think it's going to be too much for people to take in one sitting. So I emailed Frontiers and said, hey, what do you think about doing this in 2 parts? Not only for the listener, but for me. I was getting a little overwhelmed at the idea of finishing the whole thing. But I did have enough of a framework that, like, when I had the background singers come to do part 1, I had them do part 2 as well. When I had the horn players, I did quite a bit of it all at once, but I focused on finishing part 1 and delivering it. I got delivery dates, which is a good thing to have. Got to have deadlines, because you can keep working on this stuff forever. But anyway, so
especially with
that's how that happened.
With what you're doing, because your music is not verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, we're done. I mean, it goes to all different places and all. Yeah. And so I was like thinking just the sheer amount of time it must take to put these songs together. And then on top of that, I know you know studio musicians, and guys and girls who are the best in the world at what they do, but it's still very intricate and detailed music here. I mean, so when they come in the studio and the players and the different things, are you telling them what to play, or are you saying, hey, you be you, here's the song? What does that look like?
Oh, that varies. A lot of times I'll let them kind of find their way and see what happens. Very often I like what they do. I really loved, for example, in that second section, the one that starts off on the new album, the Joseph Part 2, the restoration. My friends Gideon and Gabe Klein and Sam Hunter, they took this whole section of music to a really very different place than where I had it. And that's the section that starts off with there's a prisoner in the jailhouse, or the dreamer in the jailhouse, I think is the name of the first song in that little section. So yeah, sometimes guys will just take stuff. They started doing this almost like Zeppelin thing. And I was like, whoa, I wasn't hearing that at all, but man, I'm digging that.
That's great.
Other times, I'll have a pretty fleshed out demo and I'll just have them kind of play if I really like what I'd done. I'll say, I'll give people direction, but that's a real art form, knowing when to step in. I pray a lot about that. Lord, help me, give me wisdom to know when to step in and when to just let them find what might surprise me.
Mm-hmm. That's really neat.